Hi guys. So yesterday, a friend of mine, my best girlfriend, and I were talking about the difference between joy and happiness, and I have a hard time with emotions and defining them because being autistic, I have something called alexithymia. And she practices Stoicism and I practice Christianity. So there's differences there between finding happiness, but defining what different things mean, like even contentment or just different ways of feeling things. And an ironic thing about that conversation yesterday is when I got up this morning and I started a new Bible study through my Bible app, YouVersion. The first one had to do with happiness versus joy. So I want to just kind of read through the screenshots I took from that and just kind of speak through how I'm processing it. Yesterday, actually, let me go back to that. Yesterday, I mentioned to her she said something about happiness being this goal of looking at happiness not being the goal, but the goal being finding happiness throughout how you live and carrying it with you as like having a happy life. And I couldn't connect with that because for me, happiness is something that I find in small moments, whereas when I feel joy is something that permeates my soul, it permeates my spirit. It's something that I take with me consistently. Joy is a sense of being for me, being joyful, not feeling joy. So let me go back to where I was. Ooh, maybe that's what it is for her. Happiness as I just saw something in my notes. Happiness as an energy, the energy of happiness. Maybe that's what she's getting at. Okay, I'm going to read and then I'm going to respond. I'm a big fan of healthy happiness. What I'm talking about is the world's definition of happiness, or even more relevant to each of us, our own view of happiness. The world's view of happiness is directly tied to circumstances. If our circumstances are favorable, then we're happy. If not, then we're not. So, if, depending on your circumstance, depending on what's happening around you, affecting how you feel, and happiness being a feeling, but here's the deal. Our circumstances change all the time. Exactly. Many of us allow these vacillating circumstances to dictate our happiness. It's an extremely dangerous scenario when outward forces control our inward feelings. Yes. And I think that is why I find that I feel happiness in small, like, things that come up. Like, oh, that gave me happiness. or that gave me excitement, or that gave me some type of positive feeling. But when I feel joy, joy is something that permeates my core, and I live that way. And it sounds like, from her Stoic point of view, that she is finding happiness in that way instead of joy in that way. She's finding joy in small moments and finding happiness. Joy, the settled state of contentment, confidence, and hope that only comes from trusting in a relationship with our Creator. So that's probably why, no, that is why I experience joy instead of feeling joy. Experiencing happiness, experiencing joy. So instead of just feeling something, experiencing it. Like letting it, like when something actually exudes from the inside instead of just being something that comes up during moments. Oh, and I'm definitely not saying Stoicism is fantastic, actually. Stoicism looks like a super, super healthy way of viewing life and being. But there are some ways that they speak, some ways, like I've seen some quotes and things, and I'm just like, I don't know if I'm reading it wrong or reading it differently than my Stoic friend does, but some of it doesn't quite sit right, probably because I have a God relationship and it feels too much of more of a prideful view, it's about how I feel, and it's more about a me centered, I wouldn't say, no, not pride, but more of a me centered, I'm in charge of my life thing, and not a connection with a creator, something bigger than myself thing. So when it comes to feeling things like happiness, joy, contentment, excitement, confidence, all of these things, the reason I feel joy more as my centered state of contentment, confidence, and hope that comes only from trusting God, I think her view of happiness is more like that. And it's not just a terminology thing, it's an actual, what we exude, what we experience on the inside thing. Happiness, there's nothing wrong with finding happiness. But I think happiness can be too fleeting. Kind of like in the movie, The Pursuit of Happiness. You can pursue happiness, but unless you actually have a connection with the God who I feel, if you don't have a connection with the higher power, the God who created you, that there's still something lacking, and there's still a confusion and a sense of constantly trying to be better, or trying to find something better, or trying to live a better way. Again, this is me responding and processing through a conversation about happiness versus joy. This beautiful truth is yet another indication of why joy is truly greater than happiness. Joy is not built on an outward focus. Joy is built on an inward focus. This is kind of fascinating, actually. And I'm glad I did a video instead of trying to type all of this out in a blog post. Joy is not built on outward circumstances, but on Christ dwelling inside believers. If the Spirit of Christ is always inside me and will never leave me, then my joy will never leave me. No matter what I go through, I can have joy because God is in me. Good days, joy. Bad days, joy. I've noticed that, actually, about myself, that if I'm staying connected with God, if I'm reading and like spending this time in the morning with Him, or even like throughout the day, just searching for connection with Him, that I have more joy through everything. Like, I can feel joy, I can be experiencing joy even when my body feels like crud, or even when I get confused, or even when I have times where I just can't comprehend or concentrate, or realizing when I need to ask for help. I can still have joy underneath all of these outward circumstances, because even if I'm not happy in a moment, I can still be joyful behind that, despite that. My joy remains. Good days, joy. Bad days, joy. Suffering, joy. When everything goes my way, joy. When nothing goes my way, joy. My joy remains because God's Spirit remains in me and I remain connected to Him. This is fascinating. Oh. I want your feedback on this. I really, really, really want you to respond to this. Tell me your thoughts on the whole joy versus happiness conundrum, I guess. I want other views. I want other people in on this conversation. Please, please, please do a comment, okay? Thank you. Bye, guys.